Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
So many of you over the last 3 months have been asking me questions through email about not just becoming a stronger grounded man, but also about how I built my online freedom business. You see, I used to be broke, sleeping on my brother's couch with only $15 to my name, to now having a top-ranked men's podcast on iTunes. I'm a 3-time Amazon best-selling author. I sell out events where men come from around the world to attend my powerful trainings, and I'm working with amazing clients one-on-one. I share exactly what I would do if I was going to start over in this free training on becoming an influencer at kfminfluence.com. Again, that's kfminfluence.com. This will get you in the game, save you thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of trying to figure all of this out on your own. This is the stuff people charge for, but I'm giving it to you for free at kfminfluence.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Derek Rydall. He's a best-selling author of Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change. He is also a transformational coach to Fortune 500 execs, Oscar and Emmy winners, and also online thought leaders. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. It's really great to be here. Truly an honor.
All right, Derek, let's start off with success quote. So maybe something that you've lived by, maybe something from your book, perhaps, something that's helped you on your journey, and share with us what that quote really means to you.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, I really love like Ralph Waldo Emerson, who's, one of the older philosophers, but the truth still rings true. And there's a couple of things he says. One thing he says, and I don't know the exact quote, but it's that which is before us, what is before us and what is behind us are small matters compared to what lies within us. So that's, to me, a very powerful and potent quote. And then the other one I love is we must remove our bloated sense of nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. I love that one.
Wow. And how has something like this, both of these quotes here, applied to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's everything for me. It's been the whole shift for me. For so many years, I struggled to try to improve my life and achieve a better life and succeed and get over all the heartbreaks and failures of my past. And the more I struggled to do that, trying to manipulate and control people, places, and conditions, the more frustrated and ultimately inadequate I felt, until it actually drove me to become addicted to drugs and alcohol to quell the pain of all that struggle. And then I almost died of an overdose. And in my sort of being cracked open experience, I discovered that everything that I've been striving for and searching for, I already had. And that most of my efforts to try to get it and achieve it were blocking a very natural process of discovering and uncovering and unleashing this power that was already in me and a unique capacities and abilities and a purpose. And so that quote about how what's behind you and in front of you, whatever you're struggling with or whatever you've been through, is nothing, tiny matters compared to what's within you, has been a guidepost. And then the one about getting your bloated sense of nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits, or just out of the way of this natural emerging potential within you. So often our ideas of what we think we ought to be or what we think we're supposed to do or what we think how we think you can make it are really just parental fantasies, societal conditioning, peer pressure, and it's just a bunch of beliefs and perceptions that are not really true. And when I started to consciously let go of my opinions and some of my agendas and preferences, that's the bloated nothingness, my ego, my pride, my self-protection, and be more humble and more open and more flexible to a deeper guidance, I began to have inspired ideas and I began to be moved by inspired action, and synchronicity started taking over. And there really was this order and this flow that I couldn't make happen, but by getting out of the way, I could make it more welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say it sounds like you're saying you already have everything that you need.
Correct.
It's inside of you. What you
Correct.
need to get through that challenge or to attain that goal is already within you.
Correct.
And so for someone who's saying, all right, it's in me. All right, well, where is it? How do I get that? How do I actually awaken that or release that? How do I find that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of this stuff also can sound kind of woo woo. And, I'm a guy that's all about results. I mean, I love going down the rabbit hole, mystical, transformational, big ideas. But I'm also very much about finding, the science and the evidence and the metaphors and the analogies that make it very real. So for me, when I kind of had my big sort of cracking open, Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and, my life sort of shattered. And out of that crack in the egg, I had this awareness of that the way I had been struggling to make my life work was really in reverse of how life is really designed to work and how we're designed to grow and succeed. And I began to have an awareness that an analogy that, like the oak tree, and that's on the cover of the book Emergence, the oak tree is already in the acorn. The acorn doesn't go out and struggle and strive to achieve an oak or attract an oak or become worthy of an oak. It's already there. And when the conditions in the soil match the pattern already in the seed, its potential naturally emerges. And this is what I ultimately called the law of emergence. And it's how all of nature operates. We live in an emergent world, not an attractant or an interaction one, but an emergent one. And I realized that the same thing is true with us. And now even with quantum physics, they know that in the quantum field, all of the ideas and the potential, it's already there. And through what they call the observer effect, it collapses all of this potential into an experience, what's called a superposition. The atoms are not atoms or waves. They're just they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And through observation, it collapses and becomes experience. So we live in this quantum field. We live in this reality that's not based on the evidence of the eyes and our appearances, but it's this inner awareness. And when you start to tune into that and see what is actually already in you that's trying to get out, and then just sort of tease it out and honor whatever that next step is, this thing starts to unfold. Now, one other quick analogy I'll use, just because I think this also, helps to kind of make sense of the idea that it's already within us or that it's already here. It's like, where is it? In my liver? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my brain? Where is it? We all understand the idea of like radio broadcasts, and right where everybody that's listening right now, you're inundated with broadcasts, and somewhere in those broadcasts, your favorite music is playing. Music that if you suddenly heard it would make you feel great, make you want to dance or whatever. It's already playing there, but it's not a manifest part of your experience until you tune your receiver, and that frequency of your receiver matches the frequency where that music is playing. And once you tune into that station, that music starts to become manifest. It becomes part of your experience. But it wasn't in the future. You didn't have to grab your radio and run down the street to catch it. And it wasn't in the distance, and it wasn't in the future. You didn't have to sit there and wait for it to eventually show up. You just had to tune your frequency until that frequency was the same frequency as where that music is playing. And suddenly, where there was nothing, there is this music. Well, that's not just an analogy, but it's even more scientifically accurate that your success, your wealth, your health, your love, your companionship, confidence, all these things we're trying to like create or achieve or go make happen, it's like they're already broadcasting right where we are in this field of energy or frequency. And when we tune into it, when we dial in, it starts to become part of our experience. We call it an inspired idea, an aha moment, an opportunity, a synchronicity. But what's really happened is we've tuned into that station where our music has always been playing, and now it's becoming a manifest part of our experience. So the whole emergence, what I call emergineering, which is about engineering the full emergence of your potential, it's all about ultimately creating a way of life. And that's going to be a key phrase, a way of life that is in integrity with this higher vision that's trying to emerge in you. And when you do that, it starts to show up, it starts to manifest, it starts to become new opportunities, synchronicities, all of that start to show up.
Earlier you mentioned, sometimes I like to go down the rabbit hole. I think you've gone down the rabbit hole quite a few times.
Yeah. But I'm mixing it up, quantum physics. This is Einstein, Einstein's had some of the same insights. But yeah, absolutely, man. I can't help going down the rabbit hole, but
You're in the rabbit hole, and then you found a couple other holes. You're deep in it. Well, what got you started with all this? I'm interested in what led you down the rabbit hole on the first journey that you went on, and you're now coaching. Look at the intro, man. You're coaching Fortune 500 execs, Oscar winners, Emmy winners, huge thought leaders. You're a best-selling author, and
yeah.
How does what were you? Did you kind of know you were going to go down this path? Was this something that were you this brilliant guy growing up, and this was of course the path laid out for you? Everyone was like, "Oh, Derek."
Yeah.
Share with us what it was like.
Not at all. Not at all, man. Not at all. I mean, there's always evidence. There's clues, right?
Right. Yeah.
Your destiny of greatness is actually shouting at you all over the place, but you have to learn how to read the signs, which I know how to do now, and it helps me to work with a client. And not in months, but in minutes, I can help them discover what that destiny is, what that purpose is, because I can read the signs. But I didn't know how to do that for a long time. And like so many people, I was struggling around, groping around blindly, trying to use the latest get rich quick strategy or law of attraction or some other achievement strategy. And I'm not knocking a lot of those. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Right.
But when it's coming from this premise that something's broken, something's missing, something's wrong, you're not enough, you don't have enough, and now you're going to go out and get enough and be enough, you are now on the path of self-destruction or self-delusion or ultimately deep disappointment, because it's a lie. It's not true that you're broken or that something's wrong with you. But for so many years, I was this guy stumbling around, trying to fix myself, trying to improve myself. And for well over a decade or more, and like I said, the only thing I improved after over a decade of self-improvement is my ability to describe why my life was so screwed up. I got very articulate at that. I got very eloquent at describing why things didn't work. And I could point to, when I was a child, when I was 5 years old, and daddy said this to me, and mommy didn't love me, and daddy didn't looked at my report card with all A's and one B and said, why the B, son? I could describe all of the situations, but there was no transformation. There was a bunch of information, but I was more frustrated, more inadequate. So this went on for a while. And as I said, I got addicted to drugs and alcohol. I almost died of an overdose. And I was lying in the emergency room with the IV snaking out of my arm going, how the hell did all of my efforts to improve my life get me here? And my brother always said I had a big head and a thick skull. And that wasn't enough to crack me open. I thought, well, I just need to work harder. I just need to work smarter. I just need to double my efforts. And so I did. And I got a little bit of progress. And I actually ended up getting a part in a film, and I went to shoot the film, and then everything went sideways again, and everything started falling apart. They fired the director, started firing the actors. I had a messy on-set romantic breakup, and I decided to go diving in a reef alone, my first mistake. And then sort of prayed to get lost from everything above, my second mistake. Be careful what you guys pray for. It actually works. And I got very lost, and I got trapped in a pocket of spiked coral and fire coral. Nobody knew I was there. And I was literally inches from my neck, my throat, my stomach, giant spikes of coral, like some underwater booby trap tomb in an Indiana Jones movie. And I was stuck for a long time, breathing in short staccato breaths, because if I breathed deeply, I would have been skewered. And at a certain point, I was done. I was completely toast. I was exhausted. I knew that nobody was coming for me, and I was not getting out. And I had, a sort of come to Jesus moment. I knew I was going to drown. And I tried to come up with all the scenarios of how to get out. Nothing. I was trying to bargain with the universe. God, if you get me out of this, I'll go to church on Sunday. And the universe was not cutting any deals. And eventually all I could do was surrender, just truly let go. I was going to die. And in that moment, something cracked open in me. And my ego was ripped from its moorings. And I had this vision. And it was a split second. But I saw that this guy I'd been trying to improve all these years with all these strategies and techniques to make him good enough, strong enough, successful enough, nothing I ever would do would ever be enough, because he was a fictional character. He was an amalgamation of parental fantasies and societal pressures and all these things. But right behind him, there was a version of me, which wasn't really a me. It was like an energy or just an awareness that had never been damaged, so he didn't have to be fixed. And he was already perfect or complete, like that pattern of the oak already in the acorn, so I couldn't improve upon it. And again, it was just a split second. But in that moment, this wave came along, or the water lifted. I still don't know exactly. And in the next second, I was standing outside of that pocket of coral, staring down at where I've been trapped for a long time. And interestingly, the exit was inches from me the whole time, but I couldn't see it. And this maze of coral was like a metaphor for my life. I've been swimming through this labyrinth, following all these brightly colored objects, and I was drowning and gasping for air. And that was my life. But it took this experience to see just how trapped I'd become in my thinking and my way of being. And actually, because of that experience, I was so shaken, and so the paradigm shift of who I was and where I fit was so radical that I actually pulled out of society. I was going to become a monk. And I tried the monk life for about a week. And I was fasting and I was silently retreating. I'd never done either of those. I'd never been silent for a few minutes, let alone several days, and not eating. And I got so freaked out that I broke into the monk's kitchen in the middle of the night and stole food out of their freezer in the, like some little feral creature coming out of the forest. And, the monks kindly suggested perhaps the monastic life wasn't for me. So I ultimately retreated into my apartment in Studio City, California, and went on this inner journey and went down the rabbit hole for several years, where I started to discover and unpack what that blinding flash a moment really meant. And as a result, I discovered what I talk about now, this law of emergence, this idea that it's all within us, and that most of our efforts to go get it and attract it and achieve it are blocking it. And even when we manage to manifest it from that area of struggle, we get a bigger paycheck, we're often just broke at a higher income bracket. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Or we get a big, new relationship, and we end up in the same arguments. Or we get a new job and somehow we end up with the same jerky boss, just wearing a different uniform. And that's because we've changed the world, we've manipulated our conditions, but we are fundamentally the same. And
so we can get what we want, the goal, the shiny object. And that could that's a journey in itself to get that relationship or to get that job or to have that level of significance. But we could find ourselves empty. Is that what I'm getting? Yeah, not only empty, but actually, because I've worked with tens of thousands of people around the world, and it's not just, empty is actually best case scenario. You got the money, but you're empty. But what really tends to happen, and of course that's not a good scenario. Yeah, it's like best case scenario is empty. All right. But I'm saying, when you're going from this model of how you think you're meant to succeed in life, yes, empty, but with money or success, does tend to be the best case. But more often what happens is, like me, you end up having so much pain and so much frustration and anger and angst that you end up having to quell it with, drugs, alcohol, too much workaholism, shopping, sex, whatever, but completely out of proportion. Addiction starts to happen, because addiction is primarily us trying to find something to keep the pain down so we don't feel it. We're hungering for something that we're not really hungry for. So no matter how much of it we get, we're never going to be satisfied, because it's something in us that needs to be fed. So usually you end up destroying your life, your relationships, your body. That's more likely what happens. You magnify your own inner pain through all these efforts. But when you understand that that's just backwards, that's not how we were designed to grow. Nothing in nature grows that way. And we're part of nature, that there's something already in us. We brought it with us. We're fully funded, fully franchised expressions of life. And there's a unique genius and there's a unique destiny, and we're not an accident. We actually really do have a purpose, but we haven't learned how to tap into it, how to articulate it, and then again, how to design a life that is in integrity with it. We're like I said, we're often either trying to make it happen, or we're waiting for something outside of us to change before we think we can step into it. That's another misunderstanding. You don't have to wait for anyone or anything to approve of you or validate you or the economy to be different. When you get this, you can actually, as Gandhi said, become the change you want to see in the world and literally transform every environment you're in. I was in the job I hated after I had this realization. And as I began to bring to that job the version of me that I could see was trying to emerge, the excellence, the service, the power, the confidence, the joy, the generosity. And I began to show up
and feel and play and act like I was already living that destiny. In other words, I was tuning myself into that station. That job, I started to flourish in that job. Now, interestingly, I got fired from that job 3 times. Every time I got fired, they hired me back because they realized it was a mistake. The first time, the other employees were like, "Why are you giving such excellence? You're making us all look bad." So I think they conspired against me. The second time I showed up and I again was giving. One of the managers thought I was gunning for their job. And finally, when I got fired the third time, I stayed fired. But what was happening was that I was fired up. I was so on fire because I wasn't waiting for anybody to respect or validate me. I wasn't even waiting for the right job. I was showing up as the right person. And within about a month of getting fired from that job, I got hired again in a different job, and I went from making $50 a day to $1,000 a day. I went from waiting, it was a waiter's job, waiting in a 3-star restaurant, to being wined and dined in 5-star restaurants around the country, and to actually making a living doing what I love. And I went from living on 19-cent boxes of macaroni and cheese in a one-room apartment to ultimately $1 million homes and global travel and all of this stuff that had always been in me starting to naturally unfold and emerge in my life, better than I could have even imagined.
When you say it was always within you, what about the knowledge? What about the skill sets that have to be developed over time in order to actually get to a place where you can be of service to others?
Absolutely. So there's the difference between personal development and self-improvement. Self-improvement is an oxymoron.
Why is that an oxymoron?
Because you can't improve the self. When you know the real nature of the self, as I had in that blinding flash of a moment, I saw the false self, which was all these beliefs and conditions and trying to make daddy love me and mommy, and all those things. I saw that self, and that was a fictional character, but there was a version behind that. There was a pattern. Like I said, like in every seed, there's a perfect pattern. So you can't improve upon that. It's already there. The oak is not an improved acorn. The acorn itself is not an inadequate oak. It's a perfect acorn, but it has this larger pattern that's unfolding. So you can't improve upon who you really are. It's already there, but it has to be unfolded and expressed, but it's already there. It's like, mathematics. Nobody invented math. 2 + 2 didn't equal 3, and now it equals 4, and eventually it'll equal 5. It always equaled 2 + 2 = 4. The laws of buoyancy and aerodynamics have always been here. During the time of Buddha, we could have been flying in planes and having supercomputers if somebody had tapped in to those ideas that were already here in this quantum field. So you can't improve upon yourself. But as let's say you discover that you have a desire to write books or build an entrepreneurial enterprise, and you want to build a business that helps people succeed financially or whatever the case might be, you do then become a student or an apprentice under certain domain-specific bodies of knowledge. But you're not doing it to add all this knowledge to you. Again, the real root of education comes from a Latin term educare, which means to educe, to draw out of the individual. So it's the same idea as emergence. It's telling you that real education is not about filling you up with stuff. It's about drawing out of you what's already there. So when you read a book or you learn a skill, what's really happening is you're rediscovering or remembering a body of knowledge or a wisdom that's always here and has always been here. You're just becoming aware of it now. You're not adding it to you, but you are becoming aware of it. And as you become aware of it, that's the real meaning of education. You're reducing it out of you, or the teacher's reducing it out of you. You now embody that knowledge. Before that, like the radio station, the music wasn't a part of your experience. Once you've tuned into it, now it is. Then you can put a preset on the dial and even record it, and now you can have that music all the time. So there's a process of integration and embodiment of this vast knowledge that's already available and already within us. That's called personal development. So does that make sense?
That makes sense. And it leads me to build on that. Would you say that happiness is very much the same thing, where it's always within us? We are happy beings, but we can do certain things to release it.
1000%, man. And I would only make a distinction between happiness and joy. Happiness comes from a root that has to do with happenstance, happenness, meaning it's a quality based on conditions often. Joy is a quality that is unconditional.
So
And
throw some examples of happiness and then
joy.
joy.
So happiness, like, a temporary thing, something happens and it's a happening. And as a result, you have happiness. You feel good about it, but it's a transitory, passing emotional phenomenon. It's more of an emotion.
So it's a passing experience. So I crushed it in sales today. It's a passing experience. I had sex. It's a passing experience.
Correct.
And then so joy is more of a constant state of being.
Yeah, joy, and there's nothing wrong with happiness. It's great to have those awesome high moments.
Right.
Emotions are awesome, but emotions are just energy in motion. It's just a transitory, temporary experience based on your thought or perception about the condition. Because you can crush it, but if you thought crushing it would be selling 1,000 units and you sell 500, you might not experience happiness because your belief or perception doesn't allow you to. But if you're the other guy who's just started and he sells 500, his perception about what's good activates a temporary energy of the emotion of happiness, and he's happy.
Yeah, he's going to Vegas. He's going to Vegas.
Right? And so, and so then he loses it all, and now his perception of what he has goes, and now he's very sad.
Yes.
But joy, love, peace, these are unconditional qualities that have nothing to do with circumstance. And it's an interesting thing because every single being on the planet, every person, every man seeking after that woman, that success, that fame, fortune, name, whatever, everybody is only seeking one thing. They're seeking a greater connection with this life or this aliveness that's always available to them. But we've been hypnotized and conditioned to believe we have to purchase our joy or our aliveness or our peace through some condition. We have to purchase it. We have to get a condition, then we can have joy, peace, aliveness, confidence, power. That's one of the greatest lies that has been conditioned into our society. And I love the great Zen parable where this guy comes to a Zen farmer and says, can I have a job? And the Zen farmer says, okay, I'll give you a job, but you can't have any money. I'm not going to pay you. What do you really want? And what do you really need? He's like, well, I need the money. It's like, okay, well, I'll give you the money, but you can't spend it. What do you really want? What do you really need? He's like, well, I need the money to buy some food. So I guess food is what I really need. He's like, okay, I'll give you some food, but you can't eat it. What do you really need? What do you really want? And this keeps going. The guy's like, well, I need the food because, if I could just finally eat and I could have this job and I can have the money, I can finally relax. And then I'll know that I'm okay. I'll feel safe. I'll finally be at peace, And the Zen master's like, yes, that's what you really need and want, is that feeling that you're okay and that you're at peace. Unfortunately, I can't give that to you because you've already got it. So at the end of the day, we're all only seeking one thing. And that's this deeper connection with something that makes us feel peaceful, joyful, valuable, and alive. Nothing in the world will ever give that to us.
So the whole idea of having a home and having two cars and just kind of that picture, I guess you can call it the American dream.
Sure.
That is, you're trying to purchase the dream.
Yeah, you're believing that the reason why you think you want those things is because you believe that will purchase you a state of peace or joy or self-worth or power or confidence. You'll finally have safety, security, and significance if you get all those things. That's the big lie that's perpetuated. Now, that doesn't mean don't go for those things. That doesn't mean don't have all those things. They're awesome to have. You might as well enjoy all the baubles of human experience. It's an awesome thing. But if you think that's your source of power and your source of joy and your source of freedom and your source of confidence, you are asleep. You're in a hypnotic spell that drives most of our economy, and it's designed to keep you disempowered and to keep you a slave, keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
And you'll never be free. You'll never have real power. And if you study any great leader, innovator, artist, philosopher, even the greatest entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, he's driven by a vision. And that's why even when he made all those hundreds of millions, he put it all back into his vision. And even when it was all going bankrupt, he ended up on somebody's couch because he was willing to put every penny back into the vision. He wasn't trying to purchase he was willing to just be enough as he was. And if you ever met him, there was a level of power and confidence, and he was being driven by a vision. It's the saying, the pain pushes until the vision pulls. And that's not to say that some of these guys don't have neurotic issues and aren't arrogant and egotistical in certain ways, but whether it's Walt Disney, Thomas Edison, Einstein, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, or some of the great spiritual religious figures, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Buddha, Jesus, whatever. Primarily, the reason why they were able to make such a big impact is in many cases because they were driven more by vision than they were to try to purchase some state of being, to feel like they were good enough or worthy enough.
So I was going to ask this question, but I think that we just went into it. I was going to say, so where should we draw our source of joy and happiness? And is it by having a greater vision?
It's absolutely where it starts. That's why it says in Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. Vision, and vision, because ultimately when you tap into your vision for your life, that deep burning desire to create and contribute and become something, it's not about acquiring stuff. At the end of the year, at the end of your life, your spirit or soul, whatever you believe in, it's not concerned with how much you possess, how many possessions you have, but rather how much possession you have of yourself.
Wow. Can we go deeper into that? How much possession do you have of yourself? Is that like a higher level of self-awareness, self-discipline? Let's go more into that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of that. The great line above the oracle of Delphi, know thyself. And so when you get to when you become more interested in answering the question, who am I really? What am I really? Why am I really? And where am I really? When you become more interested in answering those questions, which can never be intellectually answered, it's like a Zen koan. It's a contemplation that cracks you open. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, or show me the face your parents you had before your parents were born. But when you are willing to ask, who am I really? What am I really? Why am I really? And where am I really? More than I want to fix, change, manipulate anything, I want to wake up to who and what I really am. When that becomes more interesting and important to you, you will now become a candidate for these insights, these revelations, these aha, eureka moments where you will tap into that vision, that seed of potential that's planted within your soil. And you'll start to discover there's a real reason you're here. If you look at, nothing shows up in the world except as an answer to a need. Nothing. And so if you showed up here, you showed up because you were in some way an answer to the world's needs. Otherwise, you just simply wouldn't be here. There's nowhere else in the world where anything shows up except as an answer. So you start to discover what answer am I in this world? What answer am I in my family, to my mate, to my children, to this industry, whatever the case may be? And you start to discover there really is something that's pulling you. There's something that pulled you into showing up in this world. There's something that's really pulling you. And you start to sort of separate from the mediocrity of the world's conditions, and mediocrity has been elevated to an art form. There's $1 billion gossip industry, but you start to pull out of those lower values and tap into a vision of who you really are and why you're really alive. That vision starts to speak to you, and because it wants to fulfill itself through you more than even your ego wants to have whatever you think you want, it will start to work on you. It will start to change you. It will start to guide and direct you and transform you. And again, that sounds a little woo-woo, but it's really how it works. And you'll start to have awarenesses, and you'll be drawn to this situation or that situation. But and it looks like things are happening in your life, new opportunities, new relationships, breakthroughs, successes. But what's really happening is you're progressively becoming aware of what has always been in you. It's like they did a study on these kids, for years, and followed and saw the clues, the seed of their destiny, how it was showing up in their life. And there was one kid who, in his early years, I remember this one girl. She was believed to have ADHD, and her mother took her to 3 different doctors, and because she couldn't sit still. And finally, this third guy said, let's go out. After he examined her, he says, "Hold on, let's go out in the hallway. I want to talk to you," to the mother. And as they left, he kept the door open and he turned on some music. And the mother's like, "So what is it, doctor? Do I have to put her on drugs?" Blah, blah, blah. He's like, hold on. It's like, take a look in there. And they look in the room, and the girl who was fidgeting, she's dancing now. And he's like, your daughter doesn't have a disease or ADHD. She's a dancer. But she was being put in this box, in a seat, in a row, in a box. And that energy of who she really was showing up as neuroses or aberrations. But when she was let free, she was a dancer. She went on to become a famous dancer, choreographer on Broadway and all that. And there's other examples of this, a bunch of examples like this. But so the clues are there all along. When our focus is not inward, or we're not interested in discovering who we really are, because that energy is not understood, or it's confusing, or it gets judged by our teachers and our parents and our siblings, we end up creating coping mechanisms on top of it to try to keep that energy down, or to try to be normal or fit in, or we rebel and go into destructive behaviors. So we build this whole infrastructure of coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms on top of this energy of who we really are. And as it expresses in our life, it shows up as addictions and neuroses and defensiveness and all of these other things. But those are aberrated expressions of what is our true nature. So as you reverse that, and that's why, and then you just get a bigger and bigger drug industry and drug and alcohol industry and more things to try to not feel the pain of not living your authentic life. But as we turn that attention around and we start to look through these challenges and see what's really in here that's trying to get out, that I haven't been saying yes to, because I've been too afraid if I say yes to this, I won't make any money. If I say yes to this, I'll get fired. If I say yes to this, my dad will think I'm an idiot. Or if I say yes to this, my partner will leave me, whatever the case may be. And we start cultivating that awareness of who we really are and why we're alive. And then we start designing our life, engineering a way of life that honors that, respects that, supports that, and has us moving in the direction of that. And as our life becomes congruent, it's like that tuner, it suddenly locks into that integration. Then that we've always been, that which we were born for, starts to manifest, starts to emerge, starts to express in our life. And it's really important to note that we often think our conditions determine our destiny, but conditions don't, not our karma, not your history. They only create a set point. Your character determines your destiny, and your habits determine your character. That's why Confucius said all men are alike, but their habits separate them. So it's about ultimately, once you understand who you are and what's trying to emerge in you and what the greater vision for your life is, because you're interested in that now more than just making money or being, whatever the thing you're going after, you start to build habits and a way of life that's congruent with that. That eventually changes your character, or really evolves your character to be in integrity with your soul or your vision. And now your life starts to unfold, and all the things that you thought were in your way, or all the things from your past that you thought were holding you back, none of that can determine your destiny anymore. None of that has power over you.
Does it actually add to it, though? Like the painful things of the past and the crises of the past, does it actually add to your destiny? It actually shapes the direction of the destiny.
It's a great question. It's such an important question. We could do a whole call just on that. But it's important. It's really important, though, because what we've been conditioned also to believe is that all those parts of us that we don't like, the needy, the greedy, the selfish, the angry, the depressed, the sad, whatever, all these negative conditions or negative parts of us, we need to try to improve them or get rid of them or avoid them or reject them. But that's akin to a seed trying to get rid of all the dirt. And, if a seed tried to grow the way we've been conditioned, what's the dirt? It's made of everything that is died and rotted and decayed. That's all that dirt is. It's just literally concentrated death and decay and rot and loss. But the more of that, the more fertile the soil is and the more rich the plants can grow. So that's, again, all in nature. That's how nature grows. We've been trying to get rid of all the dirt. And if a seed did that, the sun would come out and shine its light on that seed and burn that seed to a crisp. Instead, the seed buries itself in the dirt, and now the light activates all that rich potential. And then the seed also doesn't just grow up to the light, which is what we try to do, just grow towards success, grow towards the positivity. It has to grow down into the dark. And the deeper the roots, the taller the shoots, and the richer the fruits. So we've been, again, trained to grow with only half of us. And that's why, we get a little bit above ground and a little wind comes along and blows us down. So, or the drought comes along and dries us up, or the fire comes along and burns us to a crisp. So we have to understand, again, in nature, we're meant to dig into these parts of us, to embrace them, embrace the pain, embrace the fear, embrace those parts of us, especially for a lot of us men. The last thing we want to look like is weak, powerless, or like a failure. And so we're striving and struggling to not be weak, to not be powerless, to not be a failure. And maybe we even got that from our dad. Stop acting like weak, stop crying, big boys don't cry, whatever. And we've rejected this whole other side of us. And that's why we're cut off. We have terrible relationships a lot of times, right, or we struggle. And this is about embracing that. And then understanding also that these challenges that arise because we haven't embraced those parts of us, they're going to keep creating crises and problems. But the meaning of the problem is not that you're bad or that you did it wrong or that you're stupid. It's that you've already kind of activated a bigger life and a bigger version of you, but you're still holding on to this old identity and these old concepts. And that larger life can't express through those narrow channels. Like an acorn, when its shell starts to crack, and it's like, oh my God, my life's falling apart, my protective shell, I'm going to be in danger. And it tries to like repair its shell and pull it all together. And that's going to create this tremendous pain and pressure because the larger oak is trying to emerge. So that creates a crisis in our life, a problem, a challenge. But the meaning of it is there's a larger life trying to happen here. There's a bigger version of you trying to happen here. It's not what you've thought. And you can't get to where you want to go using the same strategies and coping mechanisms that got you here. You have to let go of that. You have to discover what's the larger life, and then you have to honor it. And the one final thing I'll say about that is, again, to use nature as an analogy, the challenges and crises in our life are like the forest fire that is necessary in nature. The jack pine, among some other species, needs a forest fire. And it actually cracks open the seed pods. The serotinous glue that holds it together can only be melted by a forest fire. And it burns away old stuff and opens up the canopy. It does all these incredible things that produces a fertile environment for that jack pine to evolve and flourish. If it could somehow prevent the forest fire, it would eventually die.
Wow.
And this is true for a lot of species.
Yeah, that's huge. So by preventing, so this is what I just got from that, and I want to double check. By trying to prevent and dodge or avoid life's challenges, you are, in a way, dying.
Absolutely. You are blocking your evolution and your progress, and you are thwarting the growth and renewal process. And another analogy, which I think
that's huge. That is huge. I know Tony Robbins says, if you're not growing, you're dying. It just says it real simple. But right. I think that is by trying to, because that is what we try and do, is a lot of the times we're trying to avoid or trying to dodge or trying to prevent from happening what maybe it's supposed to happen because that's where your life needs you to go.
Yes. Or if we haven't, or what happens also is that we've been through a lot of challenges and crises, and those fires are still burning in our past, which really means they're burning in our present and sucking up all the oxygen and all the energy that we would otherwise have available because we haven't gone into the fire and let it do its work on us. We look back at our past and there's all these forest fires still burning.
Wow. So like a breakup or something that wasn't, or some sort of painful relationship that was left, that wasn't, there wasn't closure. You didn't get at peace with it. And that might not mean that you have to go and talk to that person. It might mean something within yourself.
Exactly. So all those relationships, those heartbreaks, breakdowns, failures that you didn't allow the fire to burn you and to do its work on you, and you didn't stay in that and do the work, but instead you tried to get away from it. You just got into another relationship or got another job or got
drinking
busy.
Or drugs or
exactly. You did
shopping.
A bunch of stuff to repress all of that heat.
Right.
What happens though is you can't escape it because all of the energy that requires to let those fires keep, when a fire is burning, it's sucking all the oxygen out of the environment, doing a lot of stuff. They're still burning. Imagine you have like $100 or of current currency, which is also a root of current or energy, every day available to you. But you're investing it and it's getting sucked out and burned out by all of these fires still burning. A lot of people wake up in the morning already in deficit, already in debt.
They're done.
They're done.
Mentally, spiritually.
Yeah. And
Wow.
you wonder why you don't have any energy to go for that project, that dream, that new book, that new business, or why you get so short-tempered, or everybody pisses you off and pushes your buttons and you want to shoot people on the freeway. It's because you don't have the capacity available, because so much of that energy is being sucked up and burned up by all these fires that you've either tried to ignore, deny, repress, or whatever, and you're not letting them do their work on you. So another analogy that I think works, a lot of us guys like to exercise and work out and build our muscles. Well, if you go to a gym, are you going to go to the gym and go, what's with all these weights that are tearing my muscle and causing pain? Show me a gym so I don't have all these weights doing all this terrible stuff and tearing my muscles. You wouldn't say that. You recognize that the whole purpose is you're in resistance training. So this weight is pulling and resisting, and it's tearing. And as you stay with the process, it builds muscle. It makes you stronger. Well, your life challenges are your mental, emotional, spiritual resistance training. And they're there to tear you apart and allow you to rebuild stronger emotional capacity, stronger mental capacity, stronger physical and spiritual capacity. It's there to do it. And interestingly, when you're exercising, if you can do 10 reps of something and that's your max, where does most of the growth happen? What's the hardest rep?
Yeah, the last two.
No, it's not even that. That's when people will say it's the last one, it's the 10th one, or some will say it's the first one because I can't even get my ass to the gym.
Right.
But no, it's the 11th rep. It's the 11th rep where all the growth happens, because you can do 10 reps. So if you can do 10 reps, you're in maintenance mode still. So where all the growth happens is the 11th rep.
I like that. Do the 11th rep. So when you are all spent and you feel like there's nothing left in you, that last push is where you get the most.
Absolutely. And that can be applied to not just pushing in the sense of, exerting effort, but you're sitting there with your girlfriend or your wife and she's gotten on your last nerve and you just are so impatient and you don't want to talk about this stuff again or whatever. And you take a breath and it's like you're absolutely at your edge and you just sink back down into your heart and say, all right, honey, I'm here. What? Tell me, I'm listening. That's like you want to kill yourself more than listen to that next moment, or you want to blame her or argue with her, or you want to defend yourself, and instead you breathe, you let the defense go. That's also a moment of 11th rep. Or you want to write that book, or you want to, and you've been sitting there and you work a regular job and you're exhausted at the end of the day and you feel like you got nothing left. And you instead want to pop a beer and watch the game, or you want to do whatever you do. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys don't just drink beer and watch games. I'm not being cliche here, that we all have different ways of coping. But instead, you kind of take a breath, you sit back down, and you write that first page of your book, or whatever the case may be. When you seem to be at the edge and you're willing to take a breath, sink back down, and honor the vision, not just your emotion. There's a term for that. It's called emotional reasoning, which is a cognitive disorder where we let our emotions determine what we will or won't do, as opposed to letting our vision, our commitment, our character. That's actually how you build the next level of your character.
Wow. Do the 11th rep. All right. I have a few more questions here. Let's dive into the knowledge round. Just want to go, I guess we've been deep this whole time. I usually say go a bit deeper, but I got a few more questions here for you.
I started in the deep end.
You started deep. The moment
when I was a kid, my dad threw me in the deep end and said, learn how to swim, kid.
That's hilarious. Have you ever wanted to become a highly paid online thought leader in your space? Have you ever wanted to be an author and get that book out? Have you ever wanted to speak on stage about something that you were passionate about and get paid for it? Have you ever wanted to sell courses online passively and wake up to seeing deposits made into your bank account while you were sleeping? So if you're interested in learning how to become a highly paid online thought leader and doing something similar to what I do, then you're going to love this free training I made for you, where I share the exact steps I would take to build an online thought leader business if I was going to start all over. Go to kfminfluence.com to get access to this training. Again, that's kfminfluence.com. You see, people kept asking me how I built Knowledge for Men in a relatively short amount of time. So I created this training for you to save you time and money so that you can go out there and make a massive impact and income in the world doing what matters most to you. Go to kfminfluence.com to get this training now. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. My first question for you in the Knowledge Round is, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost and they're really unsure of where they're at in their life and what direction they should go in?
Yeah.
They're on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, again, I would say the number one most important thing that we have to tap into is a greater vision for our life. You know, as Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level of thinking of the problem.
Right.
And most of us are problem solvers.
Yeah.
And the problem is, as long as you're stuck at the level of problem solving, you'll keep creating new versions of that problem because that's where you're at. Like trying to get rid of ice at 32 degrees by pouring hot water on it. What's going to happen to all that hot water? It's going to become more ice. You got to rise above that temperature, that frequency. And when you rise above it, you don't solve the ice. The ice naturally dissolves. And so you can't solve a problem. Problems dissolve as you evolve. You evolve by having a bigger vision, a vision that's pulling you, that's more empowering than your problem. So we have to start there. And if you're lost, there's a couple quick little tricks to help you discover what is that larger vision trying to emerge in you. We talked about desire a little bit, the burning, yearning desire of your heart. That's not a sign of something outside of you you have to go get. It's a sign of what's already in you that's trying to get out. Desire comes from the root of the sire, of the Father, of the creative principle, also from the heavens. So the desire is literally a clue, not just the desire for a bigger TV screen. You know, most people have bigger TV screens in their vision, but it's about that burning desire. You want to get back in touch with that. Another way to tap into what is really trying to call you and pull you is look at the world and identify a handful of people, you know, from the past or present that just really inspire you or excite you, or you wish you were like them, or you wish you knew them, you know, whether it's Tesla, you know, Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Oprah or Obama or Shakespeare or Einstein or whatever it is for you. You know, Richard Branson. And it's like, wow, these guys, something about them, man. Or it could even be a fictional character. And you ask, what are the qualities? What is it about them that I'm so touched or moved or inspired by? And you start to describe them. Well, it's their power, it's their confidence, it's their authenticity, it's their willingness to go for it no matter what. And you describe the qualities, the capabilities, the message about them that really moves you. And you kind of write all this down, and then you take their names out of the picture and put your name at the top. And what you've really just described is not them. You've described what is that unintegrated potential in you. This is called a light shadow. What happens is that when you're growing up, you start to decide based on experience, I am this, I'm not that. Everything you think you are becomes your ego identity. Whatever you think you're not becomes your shadow. And you project it onto the screen of the world. And so anything that pushes you or pulls you is a projection of an unintegrated part of you and an unintegrated part of your power. So in this example, as you describe that and then kind of rewrite it with your name, like I, you know, Andrew, I, Derek, am a person who's willing to do this and do that, and I am this and I am that. You're actually describing what is the larger character that's trying to emerge as you. Now, again, this might sound woo-woo, but it's actually core psychology. And you can even test this. You know, if you put a violin on stage and play a note, and amplify it, all the violins in the orchestra pit will vibrate to that same note. If you remove that string from those violins, you can strike that note all day long and they will not vibrate. So you couldn't resonate with these guys or women if it wasn't already in you. So as you do this exercise, this starts to open up for you what's really trying to happen in your life, what's really trying to emerge, who you really are. And then you start designing and articulating the vision for your life, saying, if I was this person, what would I want to do in the world? How would I want to show up? What would I want to create or contribute? And that allows you to start articulating a powerful vision for your life. Then you engineer your life around that vision. And if you want to know how to do that specifically, step by step, that's what the book Emergence walks you through.
Great, great. And Derek, what do you think is holding most men back from becoming their strongest selves?
Well, it depends on the type of man or the population of men you're talking about. One of the big things that holds men back is their inability to embrace their feminine. And so there's a bunch of men walking out there with only half of their power, half of their capacity. And by feminine, I don't mean they're going to walk around being like a woman, but all the qualities of that, like I said, the weakness or the humility or the flexibility or the receptivity or the vulnerability. Most men are walking around so armored and so protected that and that they're cut off from some of their greatest creative and visionary power, which is in the feminine part of them. So that's one of the big things. And the other one is that we're driven mostly by the masculine, energetic, go out and make something happen kind of energy, which again is awesome. Now, there's another sort of portion of men in sort of that are in like the self-improvement world that have actually cut themselves off from their masculine, and they're sitting around meditating all day and visualizing, and they've lost their capacity to just get shit done. But so it depends on where you are, but you need both. You need the ability to stop, sit down, be still, and do nothing, and become really interested in your inner life, in who you really are, and ask some of these bigger questions. Again, like a lot of men and a lot of women who have embraced more of their masculinity, they just can't do it. So you got to be able to stop. To he who can most perfectly practice inaction, all things are possible.
Wow. I think that's a huge point, is that what you said is most men are walking around with only half of their power.
Exactly.
And we often view the feminine as being a weak man, but there's great power in that. So thank you for bringing that up. And briefly, what would you say, top of mind, what comes to your head first? What would be 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey?
Oh man, I've read so many books. I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Great classic book. Really, really changed my life in a lot of ways because Stephen Covey was all about character development and principle. He uncovered core principles of life so that you could learn to design your life around principles instead of fads and trends and the latest strategy to get rich or whatever. So it really began my journey of learning to find these essential values and principles that never change. And then when you design your life around the changeless values and principles, your life endures, like the Great Pyramids that just keep going on and on. So he used the analogy of, you would wait until the day before the harvest and then cram the night before and plant the fields and think you're going to get a harvest. And it doesn't work that way. You have to live by certain principles. So that was a very, very powerful book. For me, the great philosophies, really reading and studying and understanding the works of Shakespeare, understanding the works of Buddha and Jesus and Lao Tzu, these great philosophers and masters, whatever your religion is. This is not a religious statement, but when you peel away the dogma and the doctrine and discover the core principles, what it's called the perennial truth teaching, you see that all of the greatest philosophies and spiritual practices have at their root the same core principles. And now you can actually apply them to your life like scientifically and get the results. So I would say that any of those kind of core books of the great philosophers, and to me, Stephen Covey was a great one. Is there anything else that comes to mind? I think that's good for right now. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them.
There's so many, yeah.
Stuff out there.
That's good. And this next question here is more of a scenario for you, Derek. Imagine you had 60 seconds with 25-year-old Derek. If you can envision where he's at personally, professionally, financially, in his relationships even, and knowing what you know today, what would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to sit down, take a breath, learn to meditate, stop striving after the next woman that's going to approve of you or the next whatever job, next get rich quick strategy, because he was struggling and striving after all of that, and stop and get still and discover what is your life really about. what is the life that if you could live that and do certain specific things that would really make a difference. And when you look back 20 years from now, you're going to say that was worth it. Get in touch with that vision, with those activities, and stay focused on that. So I would really just tell him, find the vision for your life, because I was very lost.
Yeah, really good. And Derek, that's going to wrap up the knowledge round there. And so now, what's exciting you today? What's getting you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, well, I'm finishing up a new book, a book around what I call awakened wealth. And it's how to, the great promise of it is how to generate abundance in your life regardless of conditions, whether it's the economy or whatever's going on, how you can start generating real wealth and abundance in your life regardless. It's a very powerful program I teach. The last group that went through it added about $3 million to their bank account, eliminated tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm also just in my business. I'm really excited about, one of my mottos I love to live by is do only what only you can do, and then delegate, automate, or eliminate the rest. And that's how nature grows. The pine tree is not also doing the work of the oak tree, and the beaver is not doing the work of the squirrel. Each thing has its own function, and it's doing it fully, and that creates an ecosystem. So I'm right now very focused on re-engineering my business and growing my business and my world to be an ecosystem where everyone in my life is in their right place, doing their right thing. And so I'm freed up to live in my genius zone, doing my right thing.
Yeah, I love it. And for all the listeners here, is there a release date? Is the new book Awakened Wealth, is there a pre-order on Amazon already? Or
No, not yet. That's I haven't even mentioned it to anybody. You guys are the first to hear about it.
All right.
It'll be out next year. And
okay.
But yeah, they can definitely get the Emergence book for sure.
Yeah. So on Amazon, Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change, Derek Rydall, and that's Rydall. And then also his homepage, his home website, DerekRydall.com, DerekRydall.com. Just simply Google it. It pops right up, and you can check out his programs, his books, events, and all the resources he has on his website. Some really great content. And really, this has been a very rabbit hole episode, but I think some huge takeaways for the audience. And you really added a ton of value here.
Thanks, man. I want to say one last thing. If you guys do want to get the book, I just realized I forgot one other way you can get it, which will give you a lot more stuff, is if you go to myemergencebook.com and you click on the Amazon or Barnes & Noble through that site, I'm going to give you like almost $1,800 in additional bonuses, programs, coaching, etc., to really help you apply it and actually get results. So if you go to myemergencebook.com, you can get it through that.
Awesome. And that's great. And thanks for sharing those gifts with my audience. Derek, thanks for sharing your story and the invaluable lessons here with my community. It's been an honor here having you on the show.
Likewise, my brother. I look forward to connecting with you and your audience again.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.